Welcome to In Conversation With, a podcast where I get to talk to my favorite artists, esotericists, writers, organizers, and people who I think are doing really interesting shit in the world. I'm your host, Shay in the Catskills, a queer artist, tarotist, intuition facilitator, pleasure activist, organizer, library clerk, and author of Tarot as Questions, published by Cosmic Doghouse Press. I'm living on Esopus land, currently known as the town of Shandaken, Ulster County, New York, in the Catskill Mountains. And it is my great good fortune today to be in conversation with Laetitia Barbier, an intuitive counselor with a great passion for the human soul. She studied art history at the Sorbonne and has been working professionally in the arts for over a decade. She had her first tarot epiphany at the age of 11 when she bought her first Marseille tarot deck at a Parisian tobacco shop. It sounds like the start of a novel. A passionate and experienced tarot reader, Laetitia is a firm believer in the cards' empowering nature. Huzzah! Beyond their use as a fortune-telling oracle, she views tarot as a visual tool that helps us bring clarity to the complexity of life, providing information and insights on decisions we're facing, or shining a light on options that we might not have considered. Laeti is also an independent scholar and teacher. She's worked with Morbid Anatomy since 2011 as a programming director, head librarian, and occasional curator, and shares her interest for antique divination cards and esoteric iconography via her popular Instagram account at laetitia.cartomancy. There will be a link to all of these things in the episode notes. And Laeti's gorgeous book, Tarot and Divination Cards, a Visual Archive, was published in 2021 with a foreword by Rachel Pollack, the late, great Rachel Pollack. Laeti lives in Brooklyn, New York, but is joining us this morning from Mexico. Laeti, thank you so much for joining me today and making the time.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and yeah, thank you so much. You chose the very long version of my bio, so congratulations for chewing out all that stuff.
Oh
It's
my
not.
gosh, I feel like we could just spend the whole time like tucking into your bio. It's so, there's so much there. Yeah.
So let's talk about the
But
present. Let's
yeah.
start with the present and maybe the future. What
So
do you think?
let's just check in and
Yeah.
like, how are you arriving to this moment? What is the quality of your body, heart, mind this morning?
It's pretty so like it's interesting, the quality of my body, heart, mind. Well, first you pick me up almost at the edge of my bed, like it's 8 a.m. So we were talking about that earlier. I am in a, I I'm not necessarily very preoccupied by my self-image these days anymore, so I don't mind being in my pajamas zooming at 8 a.m. from Mexico. But yeah, I mean, I every year I go to Mexico to see my friend and partake in a celebration honoring past friends and family members, and like my own invisible guardians. And I'm so like at this point I'm like really body, mind, soul. I'm like in that place where it's like exponentially growing on me. And so yeah, I'm kind of ugly, but and I showered, but I'm really excited because it's a fun, it's an interesting moment of the year for me to talk and to meet with you in general.
Amazing. Amazing. I am arriving. It's not quite so early here in the Catskills, but this is like the first talking out loud that I've done today. Um, but I'm arriving. This is the start of a long work day, and by work day I mean doing things that I have said yes to with great joy and enthusiasm. So that's what my work day looks like today, and this is starting that off. So I feel so excited to get to actually. I mean, you and I have talked several times, but this is the first time that we get to actually have kind of a full-on conversation. Which
Yeah.
brings me, yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm just excited, and I can't
Yeah.
believe we've not had more opportunity yet to do that, because if I want, I wish we could, I could teleport myself to the Catskill and make you tea from time to time.
Oh my God.
With pleasure.
We absolutely should have had teleportation by now. It's 2023. It's absurd, But yeah, so let's talk about how do we know each other and how did we meet? So I was thinking about this morning, and I took a class with you called Death and Resurrection as Muse through Morbid Anatomy. I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021. And
I
then and then after that, our mutual friend Jennifer
Yeah,
had this was during the height of lockdown, and had a birthday party over Zoom that was totally tarot themed.
yeah.
She's so good at like that kind of situation. And so you and I got to be in the Zoom room together with a few other people and just do like tarot stuff, which was delicious. And then Jennifer also gave me your book when it came out, and I would hold it up here for the audience, but I've lent it to Aurora because when I showed it to them, they were like, oh my God. So they have it right now. And so that book has been a huge part of my own teaching. It's an incredibly gorgeous visual archive, but also your writing. We're going to talk about that. And then when my book came out, this past summer, I sent you a copy, and you have been so supportive and such a champion of it, and invited me to your office hours and talked about the book. Aurora and I debriefed later, and we feel so seen. Like you completely got it, like even better in some ways than we did. It was like such a beautiful mirror. So that was what I was thinking about, how we know each other. And I'm just curious if you have anything you want to add to that.
Well, no, I think, this is the way. I mean, I remember the class-ish a little bit because I remember your name. Like I'm very, very visual, and then the idea of, like I have this weird synesthesia where, like numbers and letters are associated with colors. And it's because your name has an A and E inside it, very much like mine. I'm
Yeah.
just like, it's kind of like, like non-rationally absorbed by the name itself. And but like the class, the Death and Resurrection as Muse class, and like I there is, for the first three class there is so little student interaction because it's more, like there is some games at the beginning, but it's more kind of an art history class, like a iconography and terror history. And but so what I remember really is the like Jennifer's birthday party, which it was just so fun. And it was so intriguing to meet people this way. And I think it really was the height of the pandemic because we were just like, like I remember I dressed up for it, like
Yeah.
dressed
So did
as,
she. Yeah.
yeah, I had like, I was dressed as the sun. So I had like fake,
Oh, that's right.
I was dressed in yellow because I thought, like, what color will make me happy, to just wear during the pandemic lockdown? It's probably yellow. And so yeah, and I just, like it was, obviously we were in like such a little party mode at that time. I think that I thought the party was really convivial, because tarot can bring that. But then it was when you gave me you like, I think I saw your book on your page online, and I was like, wait a minute, what is this? I mean, I knew you were doing your own things and you had all your, like extravagant practices that you were taking very seriously, but also being, just this kind of like force of change in the world, through joy and fun and, as you said, pleasure. I think last time we talked, it was to celebrate your book, and I think I remember it totally, and you said it already, totally geeking out the fact that the word you use the most is delicious. I think it's so fun. And so I remember seeing your book, and I just, like I found, like I come from, subcultures. I was a goth. I was kind of involved in the fetish scene in Paris a little bit at some point. I've always been with like, the people, the noise people, like hardcore people, and of course, subcultures are, like the dynamic of subcultures are always the, the same. But tarot is different. Tarot as a subculture, as a scene, is very different. And it's a very different, it's something I talked with once with Rachel, because I'm, like everyone else who comes in, come in the tarot scene, so to speak. I come with like a lot of vulnerability, a lot of maybe, like resurrected confidence, which is made out of paper mache and twigs, and also this, kind of like new capacity of using a voice that I'm not really sure is mine at the end. And I remember asking her, like, how is it an illusion, or is the tarot communities, like really supportive? And then she told me, yeah, like, and it's been like this for, I don't know, like 35 years, 40 years, and there is something about the tarot community where it's like always, like people really care for one another. But one of the things I found interesting, which is going back to your book, is that within that community there is, subcultures, and the book you created with Aurora, I think, is a perfect expression of this. Like the tarot community is like kind of like truncated into the people who are part of the main channel, who publish through Llewellyn, like who get to talk at the conferences, because it's always the same rotating cast of character. And then there is people like us, my book. And I'll just say this because I've talked about that with my friend. Every time I go to an esoteric book, to an esoteric bookstore, I try to look if my book is there. Most of the time it's not there. My book is not in esoteric shop, but you'll find it in the bookstore. And most importantly, you'll find it in museum stores. And so, like, it's just this thing where, like, some people who've been in the tarot community don't even know I published that book. But we have to find other circuits. And I think, when I saw your book, I thought it was so punk, the idea of just kind of like bypassing the regular publishing industry where you have to do all the little dance and create this like incredible object of knowledge. I thought the book, the idea of your book is so political because it bypasses all the unnecessary stuff from the tarot community that sometimes are kind of like, you know it's like, it's complicated. I don't think, like there is this, from the outside it could mean that, to be a okay, maybe I should, maybe maybe I'm getting a little, maybe
Do
this
it.
is
Go there.
controversial. I've like within the past, there is this hashtag that, like I've been, like I've not been using, but like I've always, I see people, tarot entrepreneur.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like, the people use it. And so like every time I try to type, like tarot cards on the hashtag, it proposed me tarotpreneur. And I was just like, this isn't an interesting, like phenomenon where, like there is this trope of, we have to be projecting the idea of being a successful, independent tarot reader. The idea is that in the best case scenario, we are financially independent. We have lots of clients. Sometimes, not me, but I've seen that done. So, like people brag about having
We're
selling,
always growing our business.
growing our business. We read for celebrities and doctors and smart people, and then we just have to be those like extroverted monsters. And I'm like, fuck, no,
Yeah.
excuse me, but I'm gonna keep my real job. And so I'm gonna read cards because that's what I love doing, but I don't want to pressure, my non-existing intro, like I'm not an extrovert, so I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna try to preach, I'll be terrible at it. I think that it undermine the power of the work we do to just become like poster childs of like we're better than anyone. And this thing of like having to be relevant, always have something to publish, always it's just it's a crushing thing to do. So yeah, like let's just be outside of that, edge, and then do our little thing, and then have our very selective, like carefully weaved set of ethics and methods, and be weird like this.
Yes, I love every bit of that. I mean, my book wanted to be born. It was 1 year to the day from the first writing to the last pre-order shipping. And, if to go through a publishing house is going to take much longer, I'm not going to have control over even the title necessarily. I mean, one of my friends who's involved in publishing was like, when are you going to write a real book? And I was like, maybe never,
This
actually.
isn't real. I mean, that's the thing. The fact that you and I are this is the realest of books, you know.
Well, you really get it. I want to pivot to your book for a moment, though. I'm interested to hear about your process. Your writing. So English is your second language, French is your first, and English
Yeah.
is your second. Reading your book made me think of like reading Nabokov, really, is like someone whose first language is not English, but who writes so gorgeously in English, so artfully, so interestingly, like has such a ability to kind of play with the language in a way that I think maybe a native speaker can't. But I felt like, you know, that reading your book, just like my heart was like tickled with surprise at some of the ways that you express things. And so I just want to hear a little bit about your relationship with writing and what that is for you, especially as it relates to, writing about tarot specifically.
Well, yeah, it's a strange thing, you know. Like I'll see this, you know, like the writing part. I love writing. It demands a lot of energy to me. I'm not like one of those writer who can, you know, like just vomit like 2,000 word in 2 minutes. I'm not an epistolarian type, you know. I don't necessarily. I'm not, and I guess it
I
wouldn't
mean, even
be.
to use the word epistolary, like that's not, I mean, that's so, I
It's
feel
just
like you're just making my point. Keep going.
so I just like here's a couple of the I don't want it to be, you know, maybe I'm not really, you know, building up that like cool tarot reader chick character that I should probably do, but I think, you know, one of the reason I'm good at tarot, I think, is because I have a profound complicated relationship with expression, and I think writing is my favorite type of expression. I'm not good at this live, you know. I can do it when I trust a person. So like this is great. But I'm never spontaneous and I'm not witty and I'm not, you know, like this is not I just, you know, for me, it's like language is some kind of like marble slab that I need to sculpt and it takes time. And like I can't, you know, if I knock on it too hard, the whole thing will collapse, you know. So I always, meanwhile, it's hard, but it's also one of the most satisfying thing for me to write. I know it's being the experience of language, you know, like I've moved in New York when I was like in 27, I think, 25, 26, 27, somewhere like that. I can't remember. But talking a different language every day is really infantilizing. And you wouldn't believe how many people that I know, that I love, that are believing themselves, you know, being just, you know, like libertarian type, are cannot understand the reality of, or rather, and I'm going to be a little political here. Yeah, I moved to the US because New York was the only place where I believed I would be able to pursue, you know, like some kind of made up career doing the stuff I really love. You know, France is too conservative for me. And so my best case scenario in Paris would have been to be that girl working behind the counter at the gallery that never talks to anyone. So I thought, well, if I go to New York, I'll just be empowered to do more stuff. And it's true. Uh, but uh, but you know, New York is a really strange place, and people who lived in it for a long time forget the privilege it is to be able to live there, and so working and living in a place where you are born, and you know, and you don't you everything is available for you to pursue what is necessary for you to grow is a privilege, and I feel like like my relationship to language, like taught me that the idea that people forget that me using a different language every day and them sometimes judging me for it is, like something that is very dicey and weird. Uh, I can tell you that editors hate me, and so the book is nicely written, but it was, like through the blood and tears of an editor who was not necessarily very nice. But so it was, like I write well, but it needs to be edited, and I think that for some reason, like it's a I don't know, personally I've found writing in English my best, I don't know, my best form of expression now. Like I had this summer I had to write for a project, and I had to write it in French, and it was complicated to kind of switch back to this.
Oh, fascinating. Wow.
Anyway, that's yeah, that's the answer. I
And
guess.
how did it feel like publishing the book? Like, what was the, sort of what was the experience like for you? I mean, I remember when I received the book, I like reached out to you on IG and I was like, oh my God, this is amaze balls. Like, did it feel, I guess I'm asking a leading question, like, did it feel incredibly satisfying to like see this gorgeous object, you
I don't
know?
I was proud, and I was happy because, like what I wanted is to just I wanted to celebrate a culture that I found interesting. And the fact that people were able to connect to it was, like made me happy. The whole fuss of like being an author and then, like it just have it suddenly, like it's true. And which is really bizarre. Like suddenly, like suddenly people start to take me seriously, but I've never stopped being serious, and I'm sure like that's the same for you in the book, like suddenly you have a book out and then people suddenly want to put a microphone in front of your face and say like, oh, you're smart, like
They
you have
absolutely
yeah.
do not. I'm so far off the radar. Nobody's putting I put my own microphone in front of my
Well, no,
face.
but that's true. But thank God you do, because and I was kind of upset about this, and this thing is like suddenly you can only reach a certain level of like, like and but I had this very interesting thing where like I reread part of it recently, and I was just like, who is this person who wrote it?
Oh
Like
my gosh,
can I
yes.
channel back that person who wrote this because I don't feel this person isn't me. And so there is this kind of like disconnection, like I don't know how you call it, but like it's kind of like phantom child feel when I see the book. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, I
it,
relate to that.
it's good to be able, like one of the things that makes me happy about the book is, the Rachel wrote the forward, and so like somehow, there is a part of her voice is kept intact, I think, in here, and so that makes me happy about having it still. And I don't think, I would love, I'll just say this in case, I think that the book is a big deal because it's a big expensive to produce art book, and I don't know if I will ever have a chance to do that ever again in my life. I want to, absolutely. But maybe this is this kind of like one thing that I do and I will never publish anything again. So
If
we'll see,
what would you if well, and I also just want to say about the book, I wish I had it like in my hand. Go look it up, folks, but it has beautiful end papers and an embossed cover, and it's just gorgeous. Just that as a physical object, of course it is, but it is really gorgeous. If you had a chance to do another one, what would you do?
I would love for first I would love to do a volume two,
Uh-huh.
I would love to do a volume two, but and really focus on the specific decks, that I've not published in the first one. I want there is this huge section and I've been researching that stuff for years now. People will make their own decks. There is a whole, like, between Austin and Smith Spare or the Majid Mon made his own tarot deck, etc. You have this whole kind of subculture of people who create their own cartomancy or tarot tool. And I found, some of those to be really, really incredible because they're not printed. They're hand drawn on like stock cards. So I would love to do that. And then I would just do, I would love to just like put image together, like just do, like one of the thing I would love to do is I've been working on this idea of artomancy, like using art instead of cards, and then try to interrogate the art we love as a gateway to understand um, what our inner life is really reaching at that point. And so I would love to do, like a large book about that. I would love to do a biography of Mademoiselle Lenormand because she's so kick-ass and it's so
We
weird.
would love for you to do that.
Yeah, I
Yes.
would love to do that. There's a lot of story. I would love to do a big book. I'm not gonna take. Oh, I should probably not. I would love to do a lot of things, but yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what comes. I'm not again. I have enough strange opportunities and work. And the most importantly, I'm doing this because I like to read cards. I like to work with people one-on-one, and that's the reason I'm doing all this, so I can provide this experience to people. So I know, there's a lot of tarot authors or deck creators that are basically now they just focus on creating decks or writing books, and they don't really read. And that's not for me. I'm not judging them for that, but it's like a thing that at some point, if you don't, it's very hard to like theory has to meet practice. If it's just experimentation and like speculation, like how do we know it can work? And I think that
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I learned so much from like my practice is like created, sharpened by reading cards every day of the week.
Yeah, I interviewed Camille Michelle Gray for the podcast. She's an astrologer, and I asked her about, how do you sort of keep your channel open? And she was like, by using it all the time, by practicing it like an instrument. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to express, like, if you're not using the instrument, you know, if you're not reading for people,
Yeah,
then, it's because that's also where I love to do it.
yeah.
I like nothing is more delicious than a really juicy consultation with someone.
Mhm.
And the way that you talk about reading as in the cards empowering nature, tarot as a visual tool that helps us bring clarity to the complexity of life. I feel like we have a kind of similar. I actually would like to get a reading with you. That's going to happen.
Well, you
Um,
can have one
yeah,
anytime you
yeah,
want. Please.
we should just trade because I think it'd be
I
interesting
would
to
actually, I would love to get a reading from you too.
yeah.
Let's trade. Let's
Yeah,
do
we
this.
should do that. But I mean, I feel like I don't consider myself a fortune teller or, and and when I'm reading, I don't know what's going to come
Yeah.
out. It's like as it comes out, I actually learn new things about the cards. I also often feel like I'm getting the reading. Like my clients' questions are eerily close to like what's happening in my own life. And I trust all of that. Um, but yeah, how did you develop your style of reading? Like, how did you develop that sense of trust in, being able to read the oracle to speak to people's concerns and questions? Like, how did that develop for you? I
Well,
think of it when I work with my students, it's like it's when it starts to become three-dimensional, when they're able to not just like this card means this and this position means this, but the stitching together of like in relation to the question, the kind of three-dimensional insight kind of comes through and you're able to it's not just that it comes through, but you're able to articulate it in a way that's usable for the client.
yeah. So I have this whole, convoluted answer. For me, and I think this is the reason I love reading cards so much, and I'm mostly preoccupied by reading cards to one person, is I see it as a form of sacred theater.
Mm.
It's like basically I'm the actor, the cards are the writer director, and I have to perform this thing which will be seen and heard by a person, and can very much like any good work of art change their storyline, like the same way you meet a good novel character and you're like, oh, I'm going to be this, or you watch Game of Thrones like me, and then it's like Brienne of Tarth, she's the best, I'm totally I want to emulate her forever. she's my new god, and so for me, this is, so like there's something where I don't know how I'm doing this. And just to, like I talk about this a little bit in the book, but I've read the cards. I started to read cards when I was very young, but I was terrible at it. I was like like the 11-year-old stuff I was reading during recess with the little white book with Marseille deck. It was like, and it was like, am I gonna date this guy? Yes, no, like it was not necessarily my best hours. I'm not like such a gifted. I don't come from like a long lineage. Or no, I was just like a shitty reader when I was a child, but I enjoyed giving reading, and the tool itself was so fascinating to me. But then tarot was part of my spiritual life, but very privately. And then in 2017, I had two readings, one from a medium from Lilydale, who told me I should read cards again, but I should do it as a job. And then I went to read cards with my friend's stepmom, who was like one of those 70s, like the age of Aquarius tarot reader, very cool. And she told me like, oh yeah, you have to do this. And I have the recording, which is very touching, like
Wow.
I recorded that reading. So I have on tape this moment where she tells me, Letty, you have to do that thing that I'm doing. This is your job now. Like apparently everyone in the spirit world wants you to do that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take that seriously. But so I don't know if I own my craft or if I learned the thing. It's just at some point it felt like we were talking about language earlier. It's like if it's like if there was a language prior French that I used to speak that I
Mm,
forgot, and that suddenly I was fluent in it again. And so there was this thing where, like I went back and like I studied, I reread the Rachel Pollack and Jodorowsky, and then just did some like $5 reading for people. But it's just a thing where like I realized like, okay, like it's not about owning a skill. It's like it's basically channeling, someone else's playwright. And that's a playwright that has like that is of sacred undertone, because it is so speaking to the intimacy of one person in particular. It's basically spectacle for one. It's sacred theater for one person, and then the play is invented on the set. It's That's the way I feel it. And I think that this is why, like I can teach. I can teach the way I learned all that, but I can't teach the way I'm doing things because
yes.
profoundly non-rational. And I think trying to find a way to verbalize it will be an insult to to the practice. So I don't want to be too mysterious by, like for fun, but like I think I really see it this way.
I feel like you've given me just now like language for what my own experience is, which is remembering a language that I already knew. Like, I didn't start like using tarot for myself or anything until 2019. And then I went in there and it was like it was all there.
Yeah,
It was like, how am I supposed to explain this?
yeah,
I mean, I have studied, like I study all the time. I don't even think of it as study. It's just like what I do, what I like to do. But I didn't have any way to account for the fact that I could open my mouth and have, you
yeah.
know, these things come out. This sacred theater for one, that is incredible. And I'm curious like how that relates to what you were talking about earlier in terms of artimancy. Like, can you say a little bit more about that? Does that feel like an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, like for me, I come from, and I talk about that a little bit in the book. Like I was a terrible tarot reader at 11, but then I was really interested in art and religious art, and then I was interested in, like the basically the sacred dimension of images. How can image, flat surfaces, pigments or prints can supposedly own particle of the divine? How can they serve? How in certain civilization, flat images are the gateway for accessing the, like the intimacy of your God or your gods. I was really interested in that. And then I realized that around the age of like 17, 18, I used to be in the museum all the time. Like I used to go there every Sunday. I was like, the museum opened at, I think, I don't know, like 9. I was there at 8:30, so I could be the first one. And then just I have those 10 minutes of like kick where I'm alone with the picture in the gallery. And so every Sunday I used to do that. And I realized at that point, that's like I used to gravitate toward some images, and I just like the style was not, I have very distinctive taste. Sometimes it was not my taste, but there was something pulling me. And I realized that it's just because there's something in those images that spoke about me. There's something that I could see in myself that I was able to, if not see, feel on the image. And I realized that basically you can images speaks about so many things. You can take a painting and you can read it through social history, political history, story of mediums, a story of the grand history of art, of course the intent of the artist. But sometimes it goes beyond that. Sometimes like the reason we are attracted to those images has nothing to do with the intention of the artist or the social political reality that it's just there is this thing and we can't explain it. And that's the artomancy stuff is really what I'm interested to explore, because I think this is the way, for me, the cards are just images like any other images. They speak, especially when you start looking at like the history of tarot, like you look at the hangman. Most hangmen, they kind of always look the same. There's a guy hanging by one foot, in this kind of like wood structure. But you start to look at like the way people used to interpret that image over the centuries and see like the dissonance between, like the hangman from the 15th century and the hangman from the 19th century, and see, like one is a shame painting or shame image, like a punishment, and where the the man is supposed to be seen as humiliated. We're not supposed to empathize with him. 19th century, it's the contrary. He's a martyr. His pain is something that we have to own as an example. Well, so so for me, the idea of studying images and trying to figure out like what's my relationship to them, what function do I establish with those images, what power do they own, and what's the capacity in which this power can shift and itself is really what I'm after. So when I read the cards, I tell that to people. I'm mostly preoccupied by the cards, like I'm actually reading the cards, but there is stuff that happened between them that I can see, or within their depth that I can see, that is not necessarily on the image, but I have access to. So I don't channel, I don't have spirit, I'm not a medium, but I just basically, it's like archaeology. I can just dig through the images and then bring stuff that are, I don't know, super personal, but also part of a collective experience. And that's
You're so articulate about it. It's incredible. I feel like I'm like, wow, you're kind of like breaking down this thing that seems very kind of um um elusive and hard to pin down when I'm actually doing it. But I'm kind of like, yeah, it's like that, you know?
I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, no, not at all. I mean, when I work with my students, I tell them, I'm like, you know, don't don't use a guidebook. You're the guidebook. Your interaction with the image is enough. In
yeah.
fact, it's everything, and it's interesting that often when students are just working with the image, they end up saying things that are close to like the traditional meaning. And it's kind of like, you don't actually, having written a guidebook, I'm like, but you don't actually need one.
Yeah.
It's your relationship with the image. And I also, when I work with people, and I show them the cards as we do the reading and ask them if they have any kind of like strong reactions. And that people have a relationship with a symbol or an image that's very personal to their life, that's not in any tarot guidebook, that I could never know, but they articulate it. And it's sort of like, that's um I just feel like you're talking about kind of the interaction with the image as being sort of an entry point into our own personal archaeology, our own personal sort of long arc journey of life. And that that the images themselves are kind of contain all of those things.
Well, yeah, it's just like, this is, it's almost like like a body of water, so like the star card, the best card in the tarot, according to my very,
We can all agree, can't we?
we can all agree that's the
It's
best
the
card.
cover of your
Yeah,
book.
there is no bad card, but like I've always been fascinated by this card's representation because none of those show a reflection in the water. There is no, but like when you read this card, sometimes you feel it. You know that the stars are reflecting in that body of water. That is because it's night, it becomes this kind of mirror surface, and then that this woman was very close to the body of water is also reflecting in it. And I feel like for me, this is how a tarot reading feels like too, like,
Mm.
you're arranging this flat surface of image that really basically echo or reflect back, like some hidden parts of the persons that you don't know. And you suddenly you like on that body of water, on that reflective surface that the card choose to speak with, like you can see stuff, you can see reflected parts of the person that sometimes they have a hard time seeing for themselves. And I just really think that it's about this kind of strange symbolic mirroring, like they use visual but also like puns, like metaphors, portmanteaus, um
Hmm.
what's the term of it, what's the name, idioms, or word plays or
Yeah.
expression, like all that stuff, that everything is contained in like this weird package of like image and language, and then you just have to kind of pull it off.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that comes up a lot in my classes, and just something that I haven't, that it's that mirror, it's easier for me to read for other people than it is for myself. How is it for you reading? I tell my students it's hard to read your own cards, period.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you know what? I mean, I use the card almost every day for myself, but I don't need them in the context of a reading. If I need a reading, I'll just go and see a tarot reader.
Right.
Like I can use them for prompts. I use them for rituals. I use them for magic. I use them to do like inner work of like trying to figure out like, okay, what is, like I do a lot of journaling, so like one of my most dynamic entry point with the tarot is through journaling. I pick a card every day, most days, and I'll just try to figure something in the card that could open up a journaling prompt that I then you know in a weird way, it's not so far removed. I think it's also because why I liked your book so much, because like sometimes tarot opens question, and those questions you have to answer them. You can only answer them for yourself. The cards will not be able to give you the answer, they can only raise the question. And so
Mm.
I like to work with the cards this way, but I usually what I do is like I just do that for journaling. Of course, I look at myself. It's so funny, it's like looking at a photograph of yourself, like when I was I don't know, 18, I thought I was fat, like I was barely, like an
We
egg.
come by that honestly,
And then
don't
I
we?
was looking at photos of myself and I'm just like, Letty, you're so stupid. And I'm just, like I'm like a more full-bodied woman now.
Huzzah.
I don't give a fuck anymore because I know that there's just like, like at every moment I can only say, like the best version of myself. And if I don't take the opportunity to enjoy it fully, tomorrow it's going to be a little less, So the same way I think, like it's impossible to have an understanding of your own image situation through a mirror. There is always a form of dysmorphia. So if you want a good
Mm.
reading, and a good tarot reading, I'm not saying it always does, but it has to involve a little ass kicking, I think. It always have to put you in a place where, like you're like, you just, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I've not seen that before because I've refused to see it. And that's on me. Like a good tarot reading usually put you in perspective and gives you back the responsibility of not seeing and not seeing. And so, yeah, it's very hard to do that. I
Yeah.
don't, I think people, tarot reading, is something that people should do. Like, they should be doing at least two big tarot reading every year. And then, I like to do every couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, I think going and getting readings, I mean, that's what I do when I need the real truth. I know that I'm not going to necessarily get that from pulling my own cards. The last tarot reading I had was with this incredible reader in Woodstock named Saray Jarrell Johnson. The collective cartomancy is their handle. And toward the end of the reading, they were like, "Well, we still have 5 minutes left. It's your time." I'm like, "I need to go lie down." And I literally think about that reading every day. I'm like, they brought through some really, yeah. So I'm like, if you really like need to consult about something, go see a reader.
Yeah.
That's what I do. It's also amazing to just see how other people read.
Yeah, and I also feel, this is the thing where I like to read for my friends a lot. Like I should
Yeah,
not
me
say,
too.
but I mean, you probably have the same thing too. It's like I read for free for my friends all the time. People know that if they're part of the postcards circle or something, if you can just send me an email. Yes, I'm gonna find like an hour in my day to kind of squeeze them in and give them a reading, because that's the thing that I prefer doing in general. But the what I really enjoy about it, sorry, I'm just putting my cable, I'm almost out of battery, but is the fact that sometimes it's the only time I get to be real with my friends, like it is this kind of moment of pure intimacy, like in which we don't pretend to be anything, in which we can really, technically catch up in a way that is just beyond, the social construct of being successful, being happy, being, I don't know,
A person in the world doing the thing. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And it's just, and then being able to reach that level of intimacy with people is just really something that, allowed me to grow some of my friendship, and I feel like that's the sacred part too, like being able to connect on such a different human level. Not gonna say that I don't want to sound like like it's just that America is a hard country, America is a hard country to be a human being in, and I think that a lot of the things that are proposed as, like what will make you you have to be extroverted, you have to be, like a people pleaser, you have to be, like super hyper aware of hierarchies so you can walk, I have so little respect for this. And I feel like tarot reading kind of like allows us to, like to recreate other ways of intimacy, of being together, that are just deconstructing a lot of that weird, yeah, you understand.
I do. I do. It's to me, that's what queerness is. That's what tarot is. It's sort of like remaking the world, practicing the world that we want to live in,
Yeah,
finding different visions, using the imagination to, um, sort of disrupt this
yeah.
death cult crumbling empire that's, killing everything and everyone. So yes to all of that.
I know. It's just, I
Yeah.
feel like this is the thing, I feel like, when I was in my 20s, I used to be a part of a little bit of the tattoo scene and piercing, and I got my first tattoo when I was 18. Like literally the day after I went there, within 2 months after my birthday, I had a chest tattoo at the age of 18. So I was like, I'm gonna go there. I'm never gonna turn back. But I was
Yeah,
so
I'm foreclosing certain possibilities in my life by doing this at
yeah,
18.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this idea of just, I want to go to university, but I also want to be physically embodying myself this way. And you know what? I'm going to do both. And like, there is no turning back on this. I will do both. That's always been my way of seeing things. Just like, why compromise when you can do both, and then find a room to embody both extremes. Um, but so I remember, being fascinated by all, like I wanted to be a body piercer at some point, and I wanted to, I was not talented enough to be a tattoo artist because you have to be a good artist, and I'm not. So, but I was just always interested in those people whose job is to accompany people's transformation.
Mm,
And it's just there was something, like people blame the Western world for not having, like any shamanistic practice. But like for me, psychotherapy, the work we do as tarot reader, anything linked to body modification, to some extent, like sex work, uh,
absolutely.
and the like we all exist in this kind of like like crowd of the like edge dwellers,
Yes.
basically midwife other people's transformation, people like key moment. And this is the thing I love so much too, very much like a tattoo artist. Maybe they'll need me several times, maybe they'll need me one time, and it doesn't it doesn't change that even if it's one time I participate, I give the same, and then we'll never meet again, and that's totally fine. I will probably not forget the reading, or that will always think about them in a certain way, but I'm available for that. And so I think I think the work we do is really important for this, because it's completely underrated, and it's basically where all the black duck introverts of the world end up basically being, it's some kind of like the limbo of folk magic, the whatever it means, like folk magic with like practices that are not necessarily noble, not necessarily valued by, like, but sometimes very specifically hidden or subject to bias.
And
But we need,
also like just efficacious,
yeah,
like they work.
yeah,
That's, you
exactly. And
know,
then people need it. The fact is that they can't always talk about it, but like a same thing, like I have people who are, like coming from strong religious background, or coming from places where they can't, like I have male clients that are scientists who tell me, like, I had this relationship with mediumship, or, like for a very long time, but in my day-to-day stuff, I can't talk about this. So it's almost like, like we hold the keys of the closets of a lot of people, the spiritual closet of a lot of
I
people.
love that. Here's to holding the keys to the spiritual closet. Yes. So, what do you think about shifting to the little Q&A quickfire round? How do you feel
Yes,
about that? Let's
yes,
do it.
we'll do the quick fire.
So I just recorded an interview with someone the other day, and I like answered all of these questions. So I will like put in a quick 2 cents, but also to the listener, if you're listening, it might sound repetitive, and I'm sure that you can just deal with that. So Laity, what are you practicing right now?
What I'm practicing right now is mending, mending phantom genealogy,
Mm.
uh, phantom ghost bloodline.
Oh my God. I don't know if I want to ask for more, if I just want to like leave that there.
I'll just say quickly, I'm an adopted child, so I don't know, like where I come from. What I only know is that I'm half Moroccan and half from Brittany. But I was raised by my parents were, my parents, but they're not. We don't share any, like DNA. And I'm trying to understand right now, with the tarot, kind of like create this cohesive practice linked to communicating with whatever is trying to, because I feel it, I feel like stuff, people, spirits are kind of moving my shoulders in the right direction, and I don't know them to be my grandparents or the people who died. It's something else. And so I'm trying to interrogate those non addressed phantom lineage that I might have, that have been literally piloting for me for many years.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I'm glad I asked. Incredible. What or who are you listening to right now?
So I have this little ritual when I take the airplane. I always go back. I have extreme plane anxiety, and so I always go back every time I travel to Jeff Buckley, Grace. And I found for me, and I'm not gonna lie, I've listened to it again yesterday as I was walking, like when I travel, like, or when I have like moment, like for me, there is something of like an expression of angelic manifested in his voice and in his way of, I don't know. I just don't know how to, it's kind of cheesy because it's 90s, But there is something in Jeff Buckley that I'm like still transcended by, and it just never leaves me. And then Jeff Buckley accompanied me in traumatic experience throughout my youth. And
Same.
he's always he leaves for free in my in my phone forever.
Let me just say that our next episode is going to be about Jeff Buckley because I also have a very deep. I feel like we just hit like some resonant point between our souls, and it was like, oh, okay, there's the connection. Just want to say thank you for that. I'll be listening to Grace later today.
Well, yeah,
Um,
there's this song, I can't remember, it's called Something's Carol. I can't remember. It's like it's a I think like a 15th century
yes,
just song that like he reprised.
yes,
Like that's like my soul kind of like just goes somewhere else for 5 minutes
yes.
and then get like a whole wash down. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to side note like that conversation. Oh my God. I'm glad I asked that too. What are you reading right now?
so I'm rereading this book, this biography of Mademoiselle Lenormand that I had this thing to teach for like a conference, and I reread some of it, but I was just so amazed by it. I wanted to reread the whole thing because I kind of like went for what I wanted and needed. And so it reads like a page turner. It's really fun. She was insane. I love her.
I can't wait for whatever you're going to do next with respect to that. What are you watching right now? It could be media, but could be other non-media related things.
Um, I'm not watching anything. When I left New York, I watched movie yesterday. We watched Shivers by Cronenberg with my friends. We have this little movie club every Sunday night. I'm not really watching anything serial. The last thing I really loved was the True Detective first season with Matthew McConaughey, which I found to be like just such an interesting actor, and that character that he plays really moved me. But I'm not really watching anything. Yeah.
What question are you living into right now?
Um, I think, like, and then it's going to be too much information, but I'm just wondering how and if how and if I'm going to be able to continue to work at the pace I'm working. And then how, if it's serving my practice. And then, so like, I'm in this phase right now where I'm just wondering how to kind of make the best of both worlds happen, but also, just
Sustain yourself.
sustain myself.
Yeah.
I just being in another country and, like allowing for that change shift is, like kind of pushing me to just like, you need more slowness. You need more walks in your life, Lenny.
Yes. Yes to all of that. What is keeping you up at night?
Uh, well, exactly the few answers to that question. Like I barely slept last night. I have I have a lot of work stress, and I'm just trying to, I think the idea of like doing both is something that is hard sometimes. So I'm so preoccupied to do a good job, whether it's reading cards or teaching, or that I will just kind of take off my own personal health, I think. And so that's keeping me up at night.
Literally up at night. Yeah.
What's the point of, like dying if like in teaching tarot and like we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
What's inspiring you right now?
Mexicans, always. And I think this is I learned so much about, I have like some very good friends here in Mexico City, and like just the like being aware of the cultural differences, but also just the human way of expressing themselves and
Mm.
living in the world. Like I go to Mexico every year to deconstruct part of my I think New Yorkness, like I think that there is a part in New York that kind of like numb you to protect you. Well, here it
Yes.
doesn't exist,
Yeah.
like you kind of revitalize that, and then you have to be in the emotional a lot, and people respect you for being emotional. It's not seen as pathologized. So I am very honored to be able to learn from the daily wisdom of Mexican people, and because they're just so kind and so generous and so fun. And
Beautiful. What has your attention right now?
I don't know. I think this is maybe best case scenario is not having my attention set on anything.
I love that. I mean, to be in kind of a attentional liminal space,
Well,
because
yeah,
yeah,
in being in like full, ambiguity, and like having no. This is the thing. When I'm in New York, I mean, like, oh, I know what I have to do.
right.
I know what my priorities are. Like like right now, I gave myself a couple of days where I don't have to be in that space. I can be in this kind of ambiguous stuff.
Yeah,
And I
your
like,
attention doesn't have to be so like sharp. It can be more diffuse.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I like that.
And final question, how are you evolving right now?
I think like I'm evolving for sure. I think that um I used to not be able to I know I used to not be capable of closing the chapters myself. And I think this like
Yeah.
now, not necessarily that I need to be in control of my own, chapter closing, but I think now I'm like I have a better relationship with death in general, that I can put part of my old self to final rest, and then be able to kind of open up new stuff. But I know that I don't have to Frankenstein old parts of my life anymore, and kind of just like it's dead, but I need, if I put juice
Keep
in it,
going. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
has to stay alive. I'm better at that. So like I'm a better, you know, I don't know if it sounds like super tragic, but I think I'm better at understanding the importance of euthanasia in my daily practice, in my daily life, and
The
then that
importance
of euthanasia, like dying with dignity, deciding.
yes, yes.
Well, I feel like now I understand that some things have to stop, and if they don't stop, nothing grows.
Mm.
So that's where I am.
Laity, this has been so fun. And I feel like I just have a proliferation of more things that I want to talk to you about. So I'm hoping that maybe in the new year we can do another episode about whatever we're up to then. It's been such a pleasure. And I so appreciate you taking the time while you're traveling to talk to me.
My great pleasure. It was fun. It's fun it's fun to see you. I'm always excited to see you. So
Mm.
I'm excited to listen to the podcast too, and then be able to like hear other people's perspective, and kind of get to know that infra world a little more. So
Amazing. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your time in Mexico.
thank you.